I just filmed this entire video and I realized I had poppy seed stuck in my teeth, so refilming. What's up? I'm here in my grandma's apartment. I came to different city to go see her and just have some family stuff here. So yeah, I'm sitting on the floor of her apartment. You can see my suitcase I'm leaving this evening, so that's there. Crazy though, because I'm like on a floor in this pajama top, but this is the best lighting I think some of my videos have ever had. Very direct sunlight. But yeah, so this is gonna be my, sorry, I have like stuff I'm doing. And this is gonna be my reading wrap up for the month of March. I read 4 books. They were all quite short. Most of them, actually all of them, were read via audiobook. Only one I have a physical copy of. And it was a book mostly of starting reading, but not a lot of finishing. So there's a bunch of books that I'm currently reading. And I think for the coming months, my goal is going to be to stop doing that as much and to really focus on, like, if I start a book, I'm finishing that book, and not so much dabbling in and out, if you will. Yeah. So to get started, the first book I listened to with my roommate. We were coming back from a drive to a ski trip in early March, which was so amazing and so much fun. And you've probably, if you've seen any of my videos, the little kind of frosty, snowy cliffs are from that trip. It's really beautiful. But the the book that we listened to was Three Blind Mice by Agatha Christie. It's a little short story wintry collection, which is very appropriate for the drive, talking about all these snowstorms as we're driving past, you know, a landscape, a nice wintry landscape. So it's really good. The book itself, I think it was kind of very standard, very fine, like general mystery stuff from Agatha Christie. I haven't read a lot of her stuff, but it seems pretty typical. And while I would be interested in picking up something else by her, this was, you know, I don't want to say unremarkable, but it's a small, cozy short story collection. Then the other book that I listened to after that was 3 Cups of Deceit by Jon Krakauer. Now, I cannot for the life of me remember like what the charity is called and what the guy who like started the charity, his name about this. I don't think it's really all that important, but you might have known this guy because he had this best-selling novel about these 3 cups of tea in this Afghan town, and how having this trip after K2, trying to climb K2, how it resulted in him wanting to start a charity to build schools in, you know, these towns. And I remember this book because I was supposed to read it in middle school. I did not. Running theme on this channel is I don't read books that were assigned to me in school. I was supposed to read it, but I didn't. And we like had like the whole school year, like we had 3 cups of tea at different intervals, and it was like, you're learning lessons from this book. I guess we're supposed to learn to like value our education, but the guy's a liar, so I guess I value I value that now. I thought the book itself was quite, like, okay, the things that I find fascinating about the book are not necessarily the book. It's that kind of surrounding context of, oh, I remember this, you know, from my middle school years. I have opinions about effective altruism and how that relates into this book. And also this one bananas Goodreads review, which is basically saying that, like, how dare Jon Krakauer, you know, speak ill of this man who who was just trying to do some good. And it's funny, the guy's like, you know, that guy who started this, he didn't even embezzle any money. Okay, he just misused funds. Like, that's what the judge, you know, charged him with or whatever, or like sentenced him with, was not embezzling, it's misusing. But from what I understand, it's a legal, like a legally distinct thing. If you're accused of embezzling, that's taking money from your company. If you are accused of misusing, you didn't necessarily like steal money, put it in your own pocket, but you used it in a way that was not intended. So for example, for a nonprofit, if people think their money is going to one thing and you use it to buy a private plane, oh, well, technically it's the company's plane, but no one expected that. That's not appropriate use of the money. You're misappropriating funds. For example, in the book, they used funds from the charity to buy the book, to boost sales from the book, which you know, then did not bring more money necessarily to the charity. Like people might have been inspired to donate, but like objectively that kind of went to enrich the author and the founder of this charity, and didn't exactly bring money back to the charity. And people who were probably donating to the charity didn't think that's what their money was going to do. Also, there are examples of how this guy did not do the work that he said he was going to do. He did not finish up, like follow up on his promises. You know, he very clearly wasn't doing a good job. And I think that you can't, like, if you're in charge of a charity, this is such a place of like, there's limited funding, there's limited resource opportunities. If you're taking up space, you know, maybe people are inspired to like donate a little bit of money to you, but you know, you're taking up space that those people could have donated to other places. Especially this guy got like a lump sum money from Obama after his Nobel Prize win. So there was an impact in this guy not being good. Other people could have had money, other good could have been done, and you didn't do that. You're responsible for that. You can't just be like, oh, well, some good. Like, no, if your job is do good, you can't just be like, well, I did 30% good, so that counts. That's not a passing grade, man. That doesn't count. But yeah, so don't even read the book, the 3 Cups of Deceit. Go and read that one guy's review. He like fully, oh my God, it's a wild, it's a wild time. And moving on, the next book that I read was The Future is History by Masha Gessen. I liked the theme of the book. I didn't like how the book was structured. The book itself is following from like late Soviet Union collapse, you know, Yeltsin, Putin, current day, sort of that, sorry, I keep getting my like email notifications. That's sort of like the timeline that you're looking at. So like early to mid 80s into, I can't remember, probably like 2012, probably, maybe 2014. But it doesn't really go too much into like, it doesn't really go too much into Crimea, I don't think. So I think it probably ended before then. The thing I didn't like about this book is that it did that, in my opinion, really annoying thing where it follows like 4 different characters over a span of a few decades. I just tend to find that I get confused. I'm like, who is this? Why do I care about this person? And I don't think it's really established well. Like, I kind of wish there had been more of like an opening chapter of like, this is where this book is going. This is why I'm picking these people. These are why we're following their stories. It's really important to look at the kind of changing landscape. And I thought for a while, I was like, I don't care about these characters. And then finally I get to a point where I care, but I've already kind of blocked out the early half of the book. So I thought the first half of the book was a little bit meh. And then getting into the second part was far more interesting. So I didn't think there was a lot of like nice connective tissue in the book. And I think it would have benefited from more of that. But I do think if you are someone who doesn't know a lot about like contemporary Russia, contemporary Russian political culture, or protest culture, this can be an effective read for you. Especially, I think a lot of Americans are like, oh, Putin, this like super secretive KGB guy who is so impressive. And you're like, he's just an idiot who was in the right place at the right time. And a lot of people kind of, I think, romanticize him in this way, that if you know the history is a little bit ridiculous and kind of falls into his own myth-making, which is bad. So I think that's one element to this that's good to pay attention to and good to read. The other element that I really like, and honestly, I think the most interesting takeaway from this, is looking at homophobia in Russia. A lot of this is like bigger, like LGBTQIA plus anti-LGBTQIA plus propaganda in Russia. But especially at the time of writing in the book, and also today, a lot of it focuses specifically on homophobia. So I'm going to use that, but again, know that this applies to everything. Literally the other day in Russia, some guy freaked out because there were rainbows on a playground, and he's like, this is gay propaganda. Rainbows in a playground, gay propaganda. the world is terrifying. But I think the book does a really good job of looking at what, like, the increased prevalence of that, because obviously, like, it was never okay in, like, the Soviet Union or anything, but it has gotten to, like, a very violent and dangerous place. And I appreciate that Gessen included a lot of that information, because I think it goes to show you, like, when you say a country is very homophobic and it has these laws, what does that look like on the ground? Well, it looks like what you see in the book. People, like, hunting down gay people and entrapping them. It looks like, you know, these vigilante civilians beating people up and kidnapping them and torturing them. And I think it provides a lot of information as to the realities of that. It's very dark, it's very hard to hear, but I think to people who don't know what it looks like, this is an example. I also like that she included a lot of the information about Westerners, like Americans, like, who are going to other countries where they see rising homophobia or existent homophobia, and they are encouraging that. When we have those people in the West, they are selling that to other countries, and they're going there and saying, don't be like us, you know, make these laws, criminalize this, and it has real world consequences. It helps those countries legitimize these horrible views. Just in Uganda, we've seen this new law, and I think it either makes it a life imprisonment or death penalty for being gay. I think, like, that might be, I'll look into it. I'll include, like, a little blurb from what I find, but it's really horrible law, and Westerners are going and encouraging those terrible laws. So I think all of that it's a good takeaway from the book. My thing, though, I find Gessen better if you watch an interview with her. If you're not sure if you want to read this book, watch an interview with Gessen. I literally enjoyed that more. And she narrated the book as well. I think she's a little bit more succinct. She's a journalist. I think perhaps she's better about writing in those kind of shorter amounts. And so presenting her information in an hour-long, you know, lecture or interview is a little bit better. I really enjoyed her interview about this book much more. I'll put a link in the description regarding it. One thing I really like that she said, again, having to do with homophobia in Russia, as she was saying, after the fall of the Soviet Union, this was like a big step forward, was providing rights to gay people. And so when you had authoritarians like Putin coming in, their first step is to reel those new rights back, those new, like, social rights back. And so that's why they attacked gay people so heavily, because it was newly accepted in a country like Russia. It contextualized for me, why are right-wing people, politicians and pundits in the US so keen on going after trans people, going after gay, like, it really contextualized for me, why are right-wing politicians and pundits going after trans people so heavily, going after drag shows so heavily? I mean, I understand that that's their view, but, like, why is this so important to them? Why are they being so weird about it? Like, the drag thing, like, that is so freaking weird. And it contextualized, oh, this is newly visible. This is something that not everyone's used to, not everyone knows. If these people start attacking gay people, like, I'm not saying that America has a great relationship with, like, our, you know, gay family and friends and community members, but at the very least, it's been acceptable for much longer versus, you know, you might know someone who is gay much easier than you're going to know someone who is trans, just because of, like, our social strata, right? So it's easier to vilify this group of people who is new on the scene, even though trans people have existed for a really long time. It's not new. Like, oh my God. But I think you'll understand what I'm saying, right? Like, it is much easier to go after this group of people that hasn't had the same visibility and to fearmonger around them. And I don't know, I kind of am looking at it from that context of, practically, yes, these people do dislike and want to eradicate trans people, which is disgusting and horrible and unconscionable. But the specific reason it's happening now is because of this, like, authoritarian, traditionalist, you know, heavy push that is just gaining a disturbing amount of steam in American culture. And we can look at Russia to see how absolutely terrible that is and why we should not be encouraging it in the slightest. And after that very sad and depressing look, we can finish with They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hanif Abdurraqib. This was part of my book club that I do, and it is truly such a beautiful book. It was my suggestion, and I'm so glad. It's this essay collection by poet, essayist, music commentator, cultural commentator, Hanif Abdurraqib, and it is beautiful. He writes so, like, lyrically, he has so much spirit in his words. He is present. It feels like he is so present in all of these moments, and he's able to provide not only a sense of where he is and what he is thinking about in that moment, but also where he is in that era and that moment of his life. He's able to reflect on very tragic and sad moments of his life, but provide, I don't want to say like a levity to them, but provide a sense of hopefulness. I was surprised at how, despite this being such a dark book, I was able to not feel depressed after reading it. Like, I was not happy, but I was hopeful. And that is a rare skill, I think, for someone who is talking about the things he's talking about. I listened to this half on audiobook, but I read half of it physical copy, and I like the audiobook as well. Like, I prefer, I think, reading it on paperback, but with audiobook, he's actually able to provide some kind of author's notes, which I think is great for someone who is talking about, you know, pop culture moments, because obviously, you know, things can change and our opinions of people can change, and it's nice to have, you know, he's mentioning like, hey, I'm gonna be talking about someone, my opinions about this person have changed, but I still wanted to present what I wrote at the time. And that's really great, I think. And it makes for a different experience. So if you are able to, you know, pick up an audiobook in addition to the physical book, I highly suggest it. I think it's a cool comparative reading experience. One of the stories, the one that kind of includes the title of the book, is about Bruce Springsteen and Abdurraqib going to a concert. Abdurraqib goes to all kinds of concerts. He's, you know, he's going from Panic at the Disco to, he talks about like, you know, Schoolboy Q, he talks about Chance the Rapper, he talks about Bruce Springsteen, he talks about Carly Rae Jepsen twice. So, you know, he's one of those people, like, when he tells you he likes music, he means he likes music. You don't like music the way he likes music, which I'm sure is not how he would say it, right? But like, I hear people and they're like, oh, I like music. And then you find out they listen to like 3 genres. And I have people in my life who like, they like music and they listen to classical music and they listen to yodeling and they listen to, like, they listen to like Native American chanting, like they listen to everything. So when I see people like that, I just have such a respect for them, because while I can have like an interest in all that stuff, I don't have that like attentiveness and passion that others can. And so I really appreciate it. All this to say, Bruce Springsteen. I think this story is really cool because it combines a lot of what Abdurraqib is so good at. He talks about, you know, what it's like to see this person perform. He talks about the optics of Bruce Springsteen's politics, kind of the living the American dream optics, the optics of the working class, and this callback to that time, and sort of takes a look at, you know, who is allowed to romanticize the working class, who's allowed to romanticize, you know, those ideals, for whom can that be aspirational, but also too commenting on this living the American dream in the backdrop of this being the death of Mike Brown at the hands of police. And he talks about, you know, what is it like to listen to Bruce Springsteen talk about living when no one is dying, but we know the reality is that's not the case. And his ability to talk about that, to talk about the desire to hear that, to weave these multiple narratives, the narrative of the music, the ideals of the music, and the on-the-ground realities, to have a commentary on race in America and all of this, and to do it all in a way that doesn't sacrifice a beauty, I think takes a very talented writer. And that is what Abdurraqib is. I was watching an interview with him I forget, I think for some prize that he got awarded, and he was saying something along the lines of like, people said that I was too like too flowery of a writer in my music like critique or commentary, and he didn't see it as a bad thing, and I'm really glad he didn't, because he is like, you know, it's like a magical a magical writer, and I don't think I've ever been more inspired to pick up a book of poetry. I need to find some of his, because he does have a few works published, and yeah, just I'm sure that will be amazing. And I haven't finished the physical copy yet, but I think now that the book club is done, that particular meeting is done, I'm gonna be a little bit slower and a little bit more intentional about like when I pick and choose to read from him. So yeah, that's it for now. Most currently I'm reading Time Shelter by Grigory Gospodinov, which is one of the International Booker Longlist selections. But like I said, I have a bunch of like currently readings that I think I'm gonna focus April on just getting everything off my list. But yeah, let me know if you liked this video and if you've read any of these books / what you're currently reading. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.